Welcome to Lead with Hope, the podcast where we explore the power of hope, leadership, and resilience in today's world. I'm Brandy Kelly, and each week I will bring you stories, insights, and actionable advice from leaders, innovators, and changemakers who are using hope as their compass to navigate challenges, create positive impact, and inspire others to do the same. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just beginning your journey, this podcast is here to remind you that no matter the obstacle, hope is the fuel that can drive transformation. So let's dive in and discover how you can lead with hope. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lead with Hope podcast. Today I am excited to welcome Danny Bauer on the show. Danny helps Ruckus Makers do school different, reimagining education within a traditional system so that you can create campus experiences worth showing up for. He's written multiple best-selling books, and he hosts the Better Leaders, Better Schools RuckusCast, which is the most downloaded podcast in school leadership and ranks in the top 1% of all shows worldwide. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Thanks for having me, Brandy. It's excited to be here.
Well, I am excited to get started. And the first question that I want to ask, Danny, is tell us about your story. What was the turning point when your personal frustration transformed into a mission to help others do school different?
For me, when you say the idea that it's about reimagining what's possible, even in a traditional system, so that you create a campus experience worth showing up for, I think one of those turning points for me, I was this award-winning, thriving, successful teacher. And then I moved up from Champaign, Illinois to Chicago. Couldn't find a job. Nobody would hire me. Nobody would hire me, Brandy. And I don't know if that was I was a bad interview, a poor fit for the culture. Part of the story I was telling myself is, well, you got all these years experience plus a master's, and so they can get two new teachers for what it would cost to bring you in. But I wasn't finding a position. I had all this experience in Avid. Are you familiar with that program?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had experience there, and Chicago Public Schools was implementing Avid, and they had an Avid department at the central office level with openings for basically regional sort of coordinator positions to help them implement. And I finally got my shot, got connected back to education. So although it was a different role than I wanted, I eventually found my way back to the classroom as an administrator. But that was like a light bulb, eye-opening experience, because they had me working. Brandy, I was sweating, I was hustling. I had schools on the west side, the south side. It's a big town, and third largest city at the time, third largest school district. And I was working with, 30-something schools. And I really saw in a crazy range of quality of leadership, right? And quality of campus experiences. And I started scratching my head because I did quite well as a teacher. And I worked for some principals that I really looked up to. And then I was supporting some principals who I don't think they could put on their shoes even if they were Velcro, right? Like they couldn't tie it with laces for sure, but I don't even think they could do Velcro, right? They had some challenges. And I thought, my God, this is who's leading schools.
Right.
And, is it a campus experience people want to be a part of? That was it. And so I didn't jump into administration right away, but I knew I wanted to make a bigger difference, based on just what I was seeing out there.
And isn't that what drives most of us that get into educational leadership? I mean, we want to make a difference. We want to help people and make a difference. So for the listeners, what makes a great principal?
Well, today, as you know, I'm not sure when this episode airs, but as we're recording, this is the 10-year anniversary of what I built at Better Leaders, Better Schools. So I told a story of almost quitting before even getting started in a podcast and in a written, newsletter today. And then I followed up with 10 lessons I've learned over 10 of the years.
Okay.
But lesson number 10, you end with your mic drop moment, And this isn't going to be anything earth-shattering to somebody like you who's so invested in hope and what that brings to a campus experience, but also a leader's sort of inner world and what they're navigating. Um, but the secret to success is love. It
Hmm.
really is. Like
Yeah.
it's if that's your operating system,
Yeah.
and you're a purpose of service, a person of service. If you have a relationship with some sort of higher power too, it might connect there too for folks that have a faith. But honestly, faith or no faith, if you are a person that's really trying to bring love, into the world, I think that that matters a lot,
Yeah.
especially where we're in a space that trust is eroding. There's great advances of what is possible based on AI, and then there's a ton of just like garbage that is shipped out there as a result too. Sometimes difficult to discern fact from fiction. And at the end of the day, I tell leaders we support in our programs all the time. There's two questions that your people want answered, and there's really only two that matter. The first one is, am I doing a good job? So this is a question of competence, and you're going to evaluate people, you're going to give them feedback. High performers, they'll want to get better, so you can be straight with them, but they want to know, am I doing a good job? And number two is, do I belong here, right? Um, and that's to me like a question of connection, of belonging, of love, and that's what it's all about. So that's how to be a successful principal. Be a principal who loves, radically loves. I think you'll do fine.
I love that. I
I mean,
absolutely.
can you imagine? Sorry to interrupt, but I'm starting getting excited. Like, can you imagine like one, you would never get this feedback, but like, you know, oh, you want to be successful? Love less. Like, can you like
Right.
a little less love? No, like more love. Bring
Right.
more love
Yeah.
to what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have to absolutely love your people. I mean, because if you
Mm,
love your people or you don't, it's going to show. But I also think you have to show that love for yourself as well. Setting
good
those
point.
healthy
Great point.
boundaries, modeling what it looks like to be a healthy, hope-fueled leader. It's so important because we as leaders are setting the tone for our people. So loving yourself and loving others is so incredibly important to success. I love that you pointed to love as a factor in successful principles.
I mean, that's the foundation.
It is. It is. That's amazing. So when you think about professional development, especially for leaders, if you're doing professional development the Ruckus way, what does
Mm.
that look like, Danny? How are you developing leaders the Ruckus way?
A lot of times I say that professional development is too little, too late, unhelpful, and disconnected, and it's that one size fits all. And it's just like, oof, man, did we miss an opportunity here? And so what you need is stuff that's like, to me, like relevant, responsive, results oriented. But at the end of the day, with the programs we've run that have been the most successful, it's meeting people where they're at. In business is easy. Like, sim the simpler you can do stuff, whether it's school leadership or business, I think the more successful you'll be. And when it comes to business, that's just solving people's problems, right? Here's a problem. I have a toothache. Okay, I'm a dentist. I'm gonna help you fix that tooth. It's really that easy. And so when it comes to school leadership, it's sort of having a radical curiosity around what challenges, obstacles, opportunities that exist, that leader faces, and then being a thought partner and somebody that can help them, navigate that terrain, right? And so the Ruckus way, the Do School Different way, is one that is personalized, right? Even within a group setting, because you'll have open air time, to bring your full experience to the table, and we'll meet you there and help you out.
We do that for our kids. We meet them where they are. And
Yeah,
so that only makes sense that we're going to do that for our teachers and our leaders as well.
right. And like you have, the hope cycle.
Yeah.
Um, Over the years, I've learned, and this has been a business lesson too. Uh, Saying we'll meet you where you're at doesn't is still sort of squishy and ambiguous, and people don't necessarily know what does that mean and will it really solve my problems.
Yeah.
So against sort of how I wanted to do things, I came up with kind of curriculum type stuff
Hmm.
as a result to give people a little more confidence that we knew what we're talking about. So
Hmm.
one of those ideas is something I call the automatic school. It has three stages, but
Hmm.
essentially the stages are the lead domino stage. So that's all about the individual school leader making you better.
Hmm.
Then there's the ripple effect stage. That's all about capacity building, right? Culture building. That's about your people. And then the third stage is the big picture stage, and that's all about systems. Kind of dealing with like sort of foundational stuff. Because if there's a question I love to ask every day, which comes from the book, The One Thing. What
Hmm.
can I do today that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? So when you're thinking, how stuff's related and how it exists within a system and
Hmm.
then can deal with root causes, right? You become less of a firefighter and the problems that exist, they get dealt with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of curriculum-y. Then we have something called the Ruckus Maker flywheel.
Hmm.
I only want to talk about the two parts. There's five parts to it. But the first part is called the lead domino assessment. Just like the automatic school, lead domino is you. And that is I guess, helping a leader make a congruence, like an alignment between their personal and professional life, what they say they value, and what the current reality is, right? And helping them get everything aligned. And then the second part of the five-part framework is called the breakthrough blueprint.
Hmm.
That has to do a little bit with goal setting, something called objectives and key results. They get described as OKRs often. So we like those better than SMART goals
Hmm.
for a number of reasons we can go into or not. It doesn't matter. But there's goal setting, and then there's a team scorecard piece. Again, very simple, and basically you're listing your key team, you're thinking about how they relate to the values that exist on your campus. Do they get what you're trying to accomplish? Do they want to do what you're trying to accomplish? And do they basically have the capacity to do it? And
Yeah.
you sort of make a judgment and evaluation for all those people. And I'll end with this. I was doing this that tool specifically, Breakthrough Blueprint, on the team section with a client in Washington, D.C., principal of elementary school, and the light bulb went off
Hmm.
because actually the first question is, have you done as a principal, have you set up these people for success?
Hmm.
Provided resources, training, coaching, mentorship, onboarding, da 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 da, right?
Right.
And again, simple, just a green, yellow, or red dot. We don't have to do like, we don't have to make it more complex than that. And real visually and right out of the blue, the principal was like, woo, no,
Yeah.
I've ignored that, right? It was a blind spot.
Hmm.
So in our field, we love to quote like the thought leaders, Jim Collins, and are they on the right seat, on the right bus? And oh, they're not. So now I'm going to, put them on an improvement plan and we're going to help them find another school. Yeah, maybe. Like you should eventually get there if people really aren't performing up to expectations. But you start with, have I done all I need to do as the leader? Have I set them up for success?
Yeah.
And when you ask that question, often the answer is no or maybe.
Hmm.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like you need to set them up for success. Otherwise, you can't hold them accountable. That's totally ridiculous. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it goes back to what you said earlier. If you love your people, you're going to want to set
Mm,
them up for success. We talked when I was on your podcast about just the importance of coaching, the importance of having that thought partner to come alongside you and help you to see, get clear on your values, get clear on your fears, your blind spots, your motivations, whatever they may be. Because
right.
sometimes, like you said, it's not that you don't want to set them up for success. I think all leaders want to set their people up for
Mm.
success, but you have to identify that blind spot or that barrier that you're facing as a leader in doing that. So that sounds like a powerful activity that you walk your principals through.
Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah. So when hope fills in short supply, how do you reignite that in your own leadership, Danny?
So if I'm on empty and like
Hmm.
not having hope, so
Yeah.
I know when you were on my show, you talked about getting around the kids. For me, in addition to that kind of stuff, people that will energize me, uh, I love walks, I love solitude, and I love meditation.
Hmm.
So I actually like what will energize me is kind of that, making sure I get, what I need. I didn't come up with this phrase, but a lot of people like associate it with me a lot. But I do tend to say you can't pour from an empty cup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm big on that, right? So
Yeah.
what are you doing to fill yourself before you're an outflow to others? Besides solitude, I mean, like I do like being active. So like if I get in some fitness stuff, like an important part of my week and a big part of it too. So that always doing hard things, slinging around weights and whatever you're doing, for that stuff, like it teaches you can go through hard things, and that definitely inspires and energizes me.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself more an optimist or a pessimist?
I think an optimist, so it really depends on my days and how active I am at monitoring my thoughts, right? So we have that constant inner dialogue that's just going, and I don't think you actually can ever shut it off, but you can unhook yourself from being attached to it.
Hmm.
And that's something like sort of novice meditators don't realize. They think you can start levitating and all of a sudden your mind is like totally quiet. Maybe at higher levels, but like honestly, the 99.9% of people, like it's really just observing versus saying, "Oh, I am that thought," right? Like, and that kind of thing. So I try to, I like being an optimist. I like who I am better with that.
Hmm.
Um, but there's times, right, if you're not careful,
Yeah.
and that includes too, who you surround yourself with,
Absolutely.
social media in general.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I realized like, because I need to put content out to try to find the other ruckus makers to serve
Hmm.
them or to inspire them. And so social media is part of the job description.
Hmm.
And if I realize that I'm not intentional about how I'm using it, and
Hmm.
if I catch myself scrolling, it's a bunch of ads and it's also a bunch of like content that the algorithm is put in front of me to try to trigger usually a negative response,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want that. So, you know,
I do believe what you put out there will eventually come back to you. Not to say that you're not going to have to navigate some of the negativity. I think that's just
right.
part of the job when you're a school leader or an entrepreneur. I like what you said, Danny, about, being more of an optimist and monitoring your thoughts because maybe we're a lot alike in this way. I can't turn my thoughts off.
Yeah.
It's constantly going. My thoughts are constantly going. I wish I could turn
Mhm.
them off sometimes, but you can't. But we can take our thoughts captive and we can reframe our thoughts. And when we notice ourselves going negative or having self-critical dialogue, self-defeating, we can reframe that and we can take those thoughts captive and turn them into something that is going to be fueled by hope or optimism or some of the good stuff instead of perseverating on the negative. So I think that's great advice. What is one thing that is giving you hope right now, especially in this world for educational leaders?
I'm really lucky. I mean, I've gotten to work with educators, in the space for a long time now, and I forget how I was asked this question, but somebody was wondering like, how big is the movement type of thing? Like the Ruckus Makers do school different. And the podcast has been wildly successful, and there's, tons of listeners there. People who subscribe to emails, that's not a number to sneeze at. And then there's a smaller number that we support in our programs or individual coaching. But that's the people who give me hope in the team, because they're sharing stories of they're doing it. The stuff. I'm just a guy talking about things. I don't lead a school,
Mhm.
right? And uh, like my CV and my resume, the people I work with have more experience than I do
Mhm.
in education, right?
Mhm.
And I stopped counting the principals of the year that come through our programs, right? And I stopped counting people that have written books and started podcasts and spoke nationally. And I stopped counting, this is the most important metric, those leaders that had some do school different dream, right? That probably their local surroundings said, you're crazy, that'll never work.
Mhm.
And then they got in our space and said, well, that's a great idea. Let's figure out how to make it work.
Mhm.
And then they figured it out and it works. And they create that campus experience that's worth showing up for. So I think that fills me with hope, right? That really inspires me is just seeing the, I think of it like sometimes the NFL season's about here to start, so people are excited for that. Not me, probably as a Bears fan, because by week four, all the hope that I did have in the team will be utter despair. Usually that happens around week 4 or 5 for Chicagoans. Um, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I had a
But
I had a secretary. She
man,
was a hardcore Bears fan, so I hear you.
yeah, it's a horrible existence. I don't recommend it to anybody and not even my worst enemies.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to figure out how I even got onto this tangent. Um, Yeah. What was the original question? Do you know, or if I
So,
just blown up the show?
you're great. For you, what's giving you hope right now? It's not the Bears.
Man,
We know it's not the Bears.
no. It certainly wasn't the Bears. And I was talking about people in the Do School Different experience. Man, I really wish I remembered why I started talking about the Bears. Now this just seems like I'm a goofball, but uh, yeah, we'll leave it at that. If I can remember the thread I was pulling on, I'll bring us back
All
there.
right, bring us back to that. Well, I do have three rapid fire questions that I want to ask you, and just your first response, whatever first comes to mind, that's how I want you to answer it. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is your current obsession or passion project right now?
I'm writing some fiction books for the
Ooh,
first time.
interesting. What's
Yeah.
one book or resource that every school leader should experience now?
One book or resource they should all experience now. I'm looking at Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I wrote a book called Calm in the Chaos. It's about, ancient Stoic philosophy and how that fits into the modern school context. So that's a good one. That one's earmarked. It's been beat up. That's a good one to read.
Now, I know on your show you ask your guests, what would your ideal school look like? What would your ideal school look like, Danny?
For me, an ideal school would be obviously something totally different. Um, it'd be interesting in that there'd be some tensions pushing up against each other because I would want nature incorporated as much as possible with, I mean, like a lot of schools feel like institutions, more than like a really like cool place to be. And when you're in places that like just make you feel alive, there's a lot of nature, sunlight and windows and that kind of stuff, plants. Plus, you learn a lot from being outside and doing hard things out there. And I'm really into AI right now, right? And technology. And so I would love to see what we could do there. I haven't interviewed her yet, but the founder of the Alpha Schools, have you seen them down in Dallas, Texas? They're popping up everywhere now.
Check
But
that.
I'm gonna have her on the show. It's an interesting model, but basically they've repurposed teachers as guides, right? From what I understand. And the instruction piece actually comes from AI in just 2 hours a day, right?
Oh, I
And
love
their
that
kids,
idea.
yeah, their kids are getting bigger gains supposedly, right? And then so what do you do for the rest of the day? Well,
Right.
they're doing all the cool stuff kids want to do, learning how to ride bikes, start a business, how do you sort of mediate a difficult conversation, like all the social emotional stuff. So, or just how to be a good person, And they're using all that time for that instead of like the worksheets and the curriculum, and so I find that kind of interesting. And the only other thing I think that I might do differently, like top of mind, is just how might you really truly partner, with the community,
Yeah.
so that they don't feel like kind of kept at arm's reach out there, but really integrated in, at least in American culture. It might be a generalization here, but I feel like the wisdom that our elders have isn't as leveraged as it is in other cultures, generally speaking. And I speak from experience in terms of marrying somebody from Zimbabwe, and
Mhm.
the way they view family and treat the elderly, like we can learn a lot, from their culture.
Yeah. And I hope this doesn't get us too far off the beaten path here, Danny, but you're talking about this alpha school and doing school differently. I have three grandsons now, and they range in
Mm,
from 6 months to 3 years old. And my kids are talking about how they want school to be done differently for their kids. And we don't
yeah,
know what that's going to look like, but it
right.
has it has got me excited about reimagining what that might look like for this next generation. And I see that there's a lot of families doing homeschool and they're looking at micro schooling and different ways
Yeah, yeah.
to do this. So I know it's exciting, but it's terrifying for some too.
For sure. And I'll ask Mackenzie this on the show, the founder of Alpha Schools. Like it is a private school, so that gives it distinct advantages over a public.
Yeah.
But I think we can learn things from their experience to help adapt,
Mhm.
the system of school, because it is a system. It is in a bureaucracy. There are these sort of rules that might not make sense that are part of the game as it's played right now. But I think we can innovate within that still.
Mhm. Yeah, and as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I mean, some of the things I think about that I want for my grandchildren in schools,
Hmm.
I didn't even think that would be possible when I was in my 20s and 30s raising my kids. But where there's a will, there's a way, and we can create a school where there is more nature incorporated and where there is more flexibility because the content can be taught in a shorter amount of time to experience the life skills and the entrepreneurial skills and all of the other things that school can offer for our kids. Is there
Mm-hmm.
a story that we can end on that kind of helps us have hope that doing school differently is possible?
One of my nephews really struggled in a traditional public setting, and he still goes to a public school, but it's a more of a specialized one. And he's got a lot going on. Okay. But a school that's well resourced, really, that cares about kids, and is willing to meet their needs where they're at, right, can still deliver a high level, high quality education to them. So 2 years ago, this little guy who's like in sixth grade at the time, uh, and is curious about everything and super, super smart, right? Um, Hated every second of school. As a sixth grader, he was starting to experience trouble sleeping, right? And just was like so wound up because he knew he had to go face school, the institution the next day, where he was a square in a circle, right? Square peg in a circle hole, and was just receiving the message that you don't fit in around here,
Mhm.
right? And you're not successful. He get the parents get calls home all the time. He gets suspended, as a young person. He switches settings, right? And again, another public school, but it's built a little bit differently for kids like him. Uh, and he's not written up once. He's not suspended once.
Yeah.
He sleeps well, right? He's thriving. grades are through the roof. Teachers love having them and all that kind of stuff. So if he didn't change and just the setting changed, like what's going on?
Right.
So, sort of a before and after in terms of unhopeful to hopeful. But I think, campuses that really want to meet kids where they're at and give them an education, where they can thrive, they're doing school different and they're creating that campus experience kids want to be a part of. So yeah, for Levi, it's worked out. So I don't know if that's inspiring or not, but he's thriving. So much so in summer, he was trying to figure out ways to go back to school that like it didn't, you know what I mean? Like this kid just wanted to be in it more, which was just wild, and the year before that, you couldn't pay him to go.
And there's so many people right now that are dealing with that feeling of not belonging, that feeling of loneliness or isolation. And so, if we can foster that sense of belonging and connection and community for our kids and our staff in our schools, I think we could definitely do things differently. So, Danny, you are giving me hope right now. Just creating this dialogue around doing things differently to inspire hope for our kids,
Hmm.
our teachers, our leaders. It's truly inspirational. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, feel free to reach out, Danny at Better Leaders, Better Schools. If you want to join our free newsletter, that's ruckusmakers.news. You can call or text 312-788-7595. So all those ways work. Reach out if I can help.
All right, Danny. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure having you. And as always, keep leading with hope.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lead with Hope podcast, where we share stories and strategies to help you rise, lead, and redefine what's possible. If today's episode inspired you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more leaders like you who are ready to lead with heart, purpose, and resilience. Don't forget to visit sparkhopeedu.com for resources, upcoming events, and tools to help you build a culture of hope in your life and leadership. We're so grateful to be part of your journey. Until next time, keep leading with hope.